So it says Chapter 4, Section 4, Part 2, but it's actually Chapter 4, Section 6. So it's the Part 2 of what we did yesterday. All right, so we talked about irrational conjugates. Today we're going to talk about complex conjugates. So if a polynomial function with real coefficients and this a plus bi, it's an imaginary zero, then the conjugate of it, a minus bi, is also a zero. So same thing works with our irrational ones. So if I had 5 minus 2i as a zero, what would our conjugate of this be? 5 plus 2i. Perfect. Let's say I had negative 6i. What would the conjugate of this be? Positive 6i. Perfect. So these are conjugate pairs. So same thing with our irrational ones. When we had the square roots, if we have one of them as a zero, we know that its conjugate pair is going to also be a zero. So we're doing the same thing that we did in, this was 4.5. So I am given the zeros. I have to figure out if I'm missing any, and I have to work backwards to come up with the polynomial. So it gives me the zeros as 2 and 3 plus I. Am I missing any zeros? 3 minus I. Perfect. I have this one, and 3 minus I. So these are my 3 zeros. So anytime we have an I or a square root, it needs its pair. It needs its conjugate pair. What's the next step? Remember, it's always x what? Minus. So x minus the number. So x minus 2, x minus 3 plus I, and x minus 3 minus I. Yes. Because it would be x minus negative 2, which would be plus. All right, so which 2 am I going to work with first? The ones with the i's, the conjugates. We work with the conjugates first, just like we did this in the last section. What do I have to do first to simplify? Distribute the negative. So this turns into x minus 3 minus I and x minus 3 plus I. Now I can FOIL this out, or what's my shortcut? So my first term would be x minus 3. So we do x minus 3 squared. What's my second term? If the 3 goes with the x, what's left? The I. So my second term would be the I, so I squared. So minus, it's always minus in the middle, I squared. So this is our shortcut when multiplying conjugates. So now I only have to FOIL out the x minus 3 squared. How do I multiply that? Write it twice, so x minus 3 times x minus 3, and FOIL it out. So we get x squared minus 3x minus 3x plus 9. Now we got to think back to when we dealt with imaginary numbers. What is I squared? Negative 1. So I would change the I squared to negative 1. What is minus negative 1? Plus 1. So this turns into plus 1 because it's minus a negative, so it turns into a plus. What do I need to do next? Combine like terms. So we have x squared minus 6x plus 10. Am I done? No, what am I missing? I still have to multiply that third piece, that x minus 2. So now we got to multiply these out. Just make sure everything in your first set gets multiplied to everything in the second. So x times x squared would be what? X cubed. x times negative 6x. Negative 6x squared. And x times 10. 10x. Then we can move on to the negative 2. So negative 2 times x squared. Negative 2x squared. Negative 2 times negative 6x plus 12x. And negative 2 times 10. Negative 20. Joey, what do we do next? Combine like terms. So I start with x cubed. What would come next? Negative 6x squared minus 2x squared, which would be negative 8x squared. Then I have 10x plus 12x, which is 22x, and then minus 20. So that would be my answer. All right, let's look at our next example. It says number 5. So it gives me the zeros of negative 1 and 4i. Am I missing any? Negative 4i. I need its conjugate pair. So if I have a positive 4i, I need the negative 4i. What would I do next? Awesome. It would be x minus negative 1, which turns into x plus 1. So remember, it's always x minus the number, but if it's x minus a negative, it turns into plus. So x minus 4i and x minus negative 4i, which would turn into what? X plus 4i. So we always want to work with the conjugates first. We're going to FOIL these out. We can do our shortcut here. It's actually a little bit easier because our first term is just x. So we square the first term and square the second. So this would be x squared minus 4i squared. Well, one step at a time. So we have x squared minus, what is 4i squared?
16i squared.
Perfect, because we have to distribute the squared to the 4 and the I. So it would be 16i squared. Now, Joshua, what does the I squared turn into? Negative 1.
Negative 1. But then it would become positive 16.
Perfect. Since it's a minus 16, negative 16 times negative 1 would turn into a plus 16. So when I FOIL these out, or do my conjugate shortcut here, I get x squared plus 16. What do I have to do next? I got to multiply that third piece to it too. So x plus 1. So here we're just FOILing. What's x times x squared? X cubed. X times 16. 16x. Then 1 times x squared. X squared, and 1 times 16. 16. Am I done? Can I leave my answer like this? What's wrong with it? I got to put it in order. So I got to put it in standard form. Start with your highest degree. What would come next? So plus x squared. What's next? Plus 16x plus 16. So this would be our answer. All right, let's look at number 6. So it gives me the zeros as 3 and 1 plus I square root 5. Am I missing any zeros? Awesome. 1 minus I square root 5. So now I'm going to put it into the factored form. So what would I start with? X minus 3. Yes. So it's always x minus the 0. And if it's 2 terms, if we have a binomial in that, just make sure you put it in parentheses. Because what do I have to do next? Distribute the negative. So I'm going to FOIL out my 2 conjugates here and distribute the negative first. So this will be x minus 1 minus I square root 5 and x minus 1 plus I square root 5. Now these are conjugates here, so I can do my shortcut. What is the first term? X minus 1 squared, perfect. We always square the first term. Minus, perfect, I square root 5 squared. All right, so I have x minus 1 squared. What should I do there? We can write it twice and FOIL it out, so we get x squared. Perfect. Now, how would I do I square root 5 squared? I got to distribute the squared to the I and the square root 5. So this would be minus I squared. And what's square root 5 squared? 5. Remember, the square root and the squared cancel. So this would just be 5. So if we write it in standard form, it should be 5I squared. So what does our I squared turn into? Negative 1. And what's negative 5 times negative 1? Positive 5. So this turns into a plus 5. What should I do next? Combine like terms. So I have x squared. What would come next? Minus 2x plus 6. Perfect, because we're adding that 1 and the 5 together. What do I have to do next? Perfect. I can't forget about that third piece that I need to multiply into it too. So I have x minus 3 times x squared minus 2x plus 6. So we just have to make sure everything in the first piece gets multiplied to everything in the second. So starting with x, what is x times x squared? X cubed. What is x times negative 2x? Negative 2x squared. And x times 6 would be 6x. Then I have negative 3 times x squared. Negative 3 times negative 2x plus 6x. And negative 3 times 6. So minus 18. Tomas, what would I do next? Combine like terms. So we start with the x cubed. My x squareds go together. So it's negative 2x squared minus 3x squared. Negative 5x squared. What's 6x plus 6x? Plus 12x. And then minus 18. Am I missing any zeros here? A 1 plus 3i, because we can't forget about the 1 with it. These go together. So I have a 1 minus 3i and a 1 plus 3i. Anything else? I have an irrational number there. So I know that irrational numbers occur in conjugate pairs too. So if I have a square root 2, negative square root 2. Negative goes up front. So I have 4 zeros here. So we have x minus square root 2. I'm going to write the pairs together. So x minus negative square root 2, which would turn into what? So x plus square root 2. Then I have x minus 1 minus 3i, bless you. And x minus 1 plus 3i. Now, what do we want to FOIL out first? The 2 on the right? That's fine. We want to work with our conjugate pairs, but it just so happens here that we have 2 conjugate pairs. So I'm going to multiply these 2 out first, because Tomas said, and then I'm going to multiply these 2 together. Because it'll be easier when we multiply our conjugates. That way we get rid of the square roots and we get rid of the i's. So let's start with the 2 on the right. What would I have to do first? Distribute the negative. So x minus 1 plus 3i. X minus 1 minus 3i. Now these are conjugates, so we can do our shortcut. What is our first term? X minus 1, so we do x minus 1 squared. What would come next? So minus 3i squared. So we can FOIL out x minus 1 squared. So it's x minus 1 times x minus 1 and FOIL. What do we get? Perfect. X squared minus 2x. So he combined the like terms in that step. What would come next? Plus 1. Perfect. Now we have the 3i squared. That squared gets distributed to the 3 and the I. So what's 3 squared? 9. And I squared. So I squared turns into negative 1. So what would this turn into? It would turn into a plus 9. Because it'd be negative 9 times negative 1. So positive 9. What should I do next? Combine like terms. So x squared minus 2x plus 10. What would my first term be? X. So I have x squared. What's my second term? So it'd be minus square root 2 squared. So this would be x squared minus, what's square root 2 squared? 2. The square root and the squared cancel. So x minus 2. So when we multiply these 2 out, we get this, x squared minus 2. What do I need to do next? So I take my answer from what I got when I multiplied these 2, and when I multiplied these 2, and I'm going to multiply them together. So I'm just going to bring this one down over here. X squared minus 2. We got to multiply these 2 out. So x squared times x squared is x to the 4th power. X squared times negative 2x. Negative 2x to the 3rd power. X squared times 10. So plus 10x squared. Perfect. Now moving on, we have negative 2 times x squared. Negative 2x squared. Negative 2 times negative 2x. Positive 4x. And negative 2 times 10? Negative 20. Joey, what would I do next? Combine like terms. So I start with my highest degree, x to the 4th power. What would come next? Negative 2x cubed. And then? Eight x to the 2nd power, because I'm combining my x squared. So this would be 10 minus 2 would be 8x squared. Plus 4x minus 20. This is my answer here. Yeah. Notice how in the beginning I started with 4 zeros. I had 1, 2, 3, 4. So my answer is going to have the highest degree of 4. So we talked about that yesterday. Whatever your highest degree is, that's how many zeros you'll have. So if you start with 4 zeros, my answer is going to start with x to the 4th power. So if you multiplied this out and you didn't end up with x to the 4th power, something went wrong somewhere. So that will always match up. So let's say it gave us the zeros that were -2, 4, and 3. Am I missing any zeros here? No, I don't have any square roots and I don't have any i's. So we're not missing any. So this would be x plus 2 times x minus 4 times x minus 3. And then we would just have to multiply these out. So if it doesn't have an I or a square root, it doesn't need a pair. Let's say I was given the zeros as 4, 0, and 2. What would I do here? X minus 4 and x minus 2. Perfect. Where did this x come from? The 0. Because we wouldn't write x minus 0. It's just x. What would you want to multiply out here first? Yeah, we'd want to multiply these two out first. And then at the very end, we're just going to distribute that x to everything.